Hey guys, Fay-Wolfe of Diamond X Studios here, and welcome to episode 9 of Grab Bag Reviews. As you probably know, this is the first episode of this show I've been able to get out in quite a while due to various life events that put my channel into a semi-hiatus state. Now, at long last, we're back, and with that, we're going to be slightly changing the format of this series. If you remember episode 8, you'll remember that video was nearly 2 hours long, while this one is significantly shorter. The reason for that is, starting with this episode, I've decided to divide the songs requested by my top patrons and the songs voted on by all my patrons into 2 separate episodes. Long story short, the reason for this is because the number of top patron requests has grown so exponentially that I need a bit more time to give every review the care and attention it deserves. This is a necessary change for the long-term sustainability of this series as the channel continues to grow, and I thank you all for understanding. But hey, the plus side to that is that Grab Bag Reviews should be more frequent. In fact, episode 10 should be going live in just a few days. That video will contain all my top patron reviews, while this one contains the 15 songs selected in the main vote by everybody. Please keep in mind that if you'd like to suggest and vote for the songs that appear in the main vote, all you have to do is pledge just $2 per main series video on Patreon. The submissions for the next main vote episode are open right now, so if you like what you see in this video and you want to take part moving forward, you can head over to my Patreon using the link in this video's description to join and take part. With that, let's stop with the formalities and get into this. Here are the 15 songs you guys voted for me to talk about in episode 9 of Grab Bag Reviews. Have you ever come across an artifact of mainstream pop culture that's right out in the open for everybody to see, and yet it is so completely, incomprehensibly impossible to get your head around that you know it's destined to become a piece of unbelievable trivia that future generations aren't going to believe was real? That's the best way I can think of to describe Blow, a song where Ed Sheeran, the man who made Shape of You and the A-Team, decided to make a cock-swinging diesel-fueled hard rock jam with the help of retro R&B funkmeister Bruno Mars and grizzled whiskey-breathed country legend in the making Chris Stapleton. I don't know whose game of Mad Libs we're living in to lead us to a situation where a thing like this exists, but alas, it does exist, and we all have to live with that. I'm not gonna lie, I used to hate this, but this one has really grown on me over the years, not just for the sheer chaos of its mere existence, but because everyone on it is just having so much fun. It doesn't matter how incorrect it is to hear Ed Sheeran's wistful British tenor and blown-out maxi audio screaming, "Jump back, talk to me, woman, you make me want to make a baby," and "pull my trigger, let me blow your mind." Because at the end of the day, this song wasn't made for you, it was made for Ed. From the beginning of his career mixing acoustic folk rock with rapping, it's been clear that Ed Sheeran is a man who genuinely loves music and is enamored with the sheer range of genre options this art form is capable of expanding into. After making 3 albums of songs immaculately calculated for mainstream crossover potential, Ed just let himself go wild on Number 6 Collaborations project, using the connections he had garnered to live out his musical fantasies and step into every single genre he'd ever wanted to make. I don't think it fully panned out, since a lot of the songs on the album do in fact sound like they were made purely out of the obligation just to make something with every celebrity Ed was able to get on his sign-up list. But Blow is Ed Sheeran putting on his hair metal god Halloween costume and just having the time of his life with it. Chris Stapleton has always had a bit of a hard rock edge to him. I imagine this was a fun break of pace for him as much as Ed, while Bruno has always been a genre chameleon who tries on different genres like prom tuxedos, and so he actually does somehow find a way to make this song make sense. I'm not going to deny that this is the hottest of hot messes, objectively speaking, but if you ask me, this is a song by Ed Sheeran for Ed Sheeran, and I'd be lying if I said the sheer reckless abandon of his own hype wasn't at least a little infectious.
One does it better. There's nothing better. That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way you make me feel. That's just the way you make me feel.
There are certain albums that become so acclaimed that they become pop culture milestones even if they weren't actually that big. And if you ask me, Janelle Monáe's Dirty Computer is one of those albums. I know for a fact that I am nowhere close to the first person to hear Make Me Feel and think, wow, this sounds a lot like a Prince song, what with its automatopoeic snaps and mouth noises, slick synth grooves, soft, slightly mumbled falsetto, and general tendency towards focus on the high end with very minimal bass. As it turns out, not only was the comparison to Prince literally one of the first things listed on this song's Wikipedia page, but it also told me that, no shit, Prince actually produced this one. Both Janelle Monáe and several of Prince's collaborators have confirmed that he worked with them on this album prior to his death, giving suggestions, helping develop the album's sonic identity, and even directly contributing some pieces of the instrumental. I listened to the rest of the singles off of this album, and while none of them sound nearly as princely as this one does, I can definitely hear his sonic ideals of tightly controlled, meticulous strokes in there, particularly in Pink. I really like that one. I can say pretty definitively that with this album, Janelle lived up to the legacy of the man who helped make it, and that is the highest compliment I can possibly give them.
No, I ain't lying. You know I can't stand it. You're running around. You know better, Daddy.
I'm well aware that every one of these episodes may be someone's first, so I feel the need to point out pretty much every time that I'm not some crazy expert in music or music history. I'm literally just a normal guy who's interested in music history, but is mostly just telling y'all what I think of the music I hear. And that relative lack of knowledge of music history is probably why I'm not as familiar with Nina Simone as I probably should be. She's one of the most legendary jazz vocalists of all time, with a repertoire so wide-ranging and eclectic that it would be a disservice for me to try and summarize it here. Let's just say there's a pretty good chance that the best music your favorite artists made between the late 60s and late 2000s was probably influenced directly by this woman's work. This particular song, I Put a Spell on You, actually has another layer of intrigue, since it's a cover of a classic 1956 rock song, originally released by shock rock pioneer Screamin' Jay Hawkins. This original song is easily one of the most important songs in rock history, since its harsh theatrical delivery and off-kilter atmosphere of looming dread make it one of the progenitors of metal. And Nina Simone's cover is equally fascinating, since it manages to adopt this song from a rock format into the blues without losing any of that edge or potency. The best blues music is the kind of stuff that rattles you down to your bones, making you feel the true depths that human sorrow and longing are able to reach. And hearing Nina delivering this haunting ode with the captivating gravel of a witch, complete with freeform scats and ad-libs, truly makes her feel like a spider slowly and meticulously spinning this web in which to snare her captive lover. The dancing piano, low swinging saxophone, and foggy gray strings delay the bass. It takes a truly special talent and not just recognize the essence of a song, but to fundamentally change the structure of that song while keeping that essence intact. And Nina Simone has managed to do that, taking Jay Hawkins' versions and making a new take on it that's new and yet no less effective. I've got a special place in my heart for songs that take a fairly basic or straightforward idea and do them so well that they effectively become the default standard for that type of song in the collective consciousness. While I don't think Helena by My Chemical Romance is quite well known enough to fit neatly into that category, I do think it's riding on that same kind of energy. This was MCR's breakthrough, hitting the top 40 in the fall of 2005, and since MCR was basically the main catalyst to the whole late 2000s emo revival and Helena is considered their signature song, I think you can reasonably argue this song's success was one of the turning points of all 2000s pop culture. To quote Talia Sagamonia of NME, this song was a pivotal moment in cross-fertilizing goth with emo, ensuring that black clothes and eyeliner became, once again, Teenage Rebellion's default setting. Personally, I can see why this song was so exciting to kids in the proto-Hot Topic scene at the time, because while this song is intense and angsty, it's not mopey or depressing. It still has all the tight-wound energy and high intensity so characteristic of My Chemical Romance, which enables kids to engage with the natural dark thoughts that come with their age without succumbing to them and being totally overwhelmed. Apparently, this song is about the Way brothers' grandmother passing away, their grief over losing her, and it's essentially a pep talk to convince themselves that they need to stay in the world while learning to let her go. But like many great songs, this one is open-ended without being overly general or vague, allowing this song to be a puzzle piece that can fit into the grief of any kind of difficult forward progress. This was apparently the last song that MCR played in their final show before breaking up, leaving their fans with the final line, "So long and good night." 10 out of 10, no notes. Disclaimer, due to the extended production time of this video, this next segment was written in early 2022, before we knew certain things about this artist that we do now. Since I'm never going to be able to write about this artist the same way again, I've decided not to edit this segment, and I'm going to let this stand as the last words I ever wrote about this artist before his reputation was tarnished forever.
I don't like the most, so I think it's time for us to have a toast. Let's have a toast for the douchebags. Let's have a toast for the assholes. Let's have a toast for the scumbags. Every one of them that I know.
A couple years back, Rolling Stone put out an updated list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. Runaway ended up at number 25 on that list, meaning that Rolling Stone declared this to be the 25th best song ever made, and immediately after the list was published, Rolling Stone got swarmed by Kanye stans demanding to know why the song was so low. That is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my time doing this. So, does Runaway deserve to be called the 25th best song ever made? Well, my honest answer to that is that I think it's a stupid question. I think trying trying to quantify and order the best or worst songs ever made, or even the best or worst songs I've ever heard. I think that's impossible and reductive considering the sheer breadth and malleable nature of this medium. But if you were to ask me if this was more generally one of the best songs ever made, I mean, yeah, I see the argument. It's genuinely hard to call Kanye West a genius these days, knowing the amount of damage the use on that label of him specifically has done not just to the general discourse surrounding to him, but to the man's psyche itself. But I do genuinely believe that, on a musical level at least, Kanye West is, or at least was, a genius. I've seen tapes of him working behind the scenes, and it's very clear to me that the man simply perceives music and the general structure of building blocks of audio and composition in a way I've only ever seen in true musical prodigies. And I do think Runaway is one of the best examples of what this man is capable of at his peak. I mean, this is fundamentally a 4-chord song, just swapping out the major fourth for the relative minor, an extremely basic structure, and yet he manages to keep the whole thing so engaging throughout its 9-minute run. From the most iconic solo piano line since Black Parade, to the blown-out Rick James sample, to the twisting snake of a trailing melody, to the bit-crush distortion vocals that he freestyles out throughout the track's final half. On top of that, the content is as classic and iconic as Kanye is capable of, diving into his own inadequacies as a man and a lover, and not saying anything exceptionally poetic or profound, just offering such uncompromised raw honesty as he offers a toast to the douchebags, the assholes, the scumbags, and the jerk-offs, while admitting that he is one of them despite his best efforts to overcome it. I'm not going to pass judgment on whether this is one of the best songs ever made, but it is definitely one of the best songs Kanye West has ever made, being the definition of dark, twisted, beautiful, and fantastic.
Inside my heart is breaking, my makeup may be flaking, but my smile still stays on.
Okay, let's get this out of the way. If you never realized it, a cover of this song is the theme song for The Nostalgia Critic, and that's why he's in the thumbnail. Alright, got that over with, now let's actually talk about it. When Brian May wrote The Show Must Go On in 1990, there's no way that he didn't know it would be one of the last songs he would write for his legendary bandmate. By the end of the year, it was clear that Freddie Mercury was in the final stages of his life, HIV and AIDS having stripped his body of much of its strength. However, the song that Brian had written wasn't a song of sadness or a defeatist ode to a man in decline, but rather a massive, bombastic statement of the defining ethos of Queen and the man who led it. This song he had written was a towering, monumental beast of a thing that was just as self-indulgent and grandiose as it was flamboyant, all in the best possible way. In many ways, it was cut from the same cloth as many of the other prog rock juggernauts that had made Queen a household name, projecting a full cathedral's worth of volume and scope with a full orchestral suite, and yet this particular song was so much more than that, because more than anything, it represented the acceptance that a tragedy was fast approaching, while simultaneously reflecting on a die-hard refusal to let that or any other tragedy put a dent in the uniquely human resolve to drive forward, power through all obstacles, and lay conquest to all you see before you. It was corny and overblown as all hell, literally being named after the oldest cliche about powering through adversity in the book, and yet if there was any band on earth that had earned the right to claim ownership of that cliche to mark their last grand hurrah, it was Queen. Freddie Mercury's life had been a never-ending quest to push himself further and further past the limit. No matter how ill Freddie felt, he never grumbled to anyone or sought sympathy of any kind. It was his battle, no one else's, and he always wore a brave face against the ever-increasing odds against him. Inside, his heart was breaking, his makeup may be flaking, but his smile still carried on. And thus, when Brian May introduced this final hurrah to him and asked whether he would be able to hit the song's high notes and give the theatricality that the song demanded, Freddie responded with, and I quote, "I'll fucking do it, darling," and then proceeded to drown a shot of vodka before effortlessly delivering one final, legendary, perfect performance befitting his title as one of the greatest vocalists who ever lived. The Show Must Go On was the final song on Mercury's final album, and never in rock history has a band so legendary ended on a note so perfect.
Back and forth through my mind behind a cigarette, and a message coming from my eyes says leave it alone.
Seven Nation Army was recorded in April of 2002. It was the lead single off of White Stripes' fourth studio album, Elephant, and was serviced to alt-rock radio on February 17th of 2003. For long, it was one of the biggest rock hits of the year, serving as the spearhead of the early 2000s garage rock revival and catapulting the White Stripes into the national spotlight. I find it utterly impossible to believe that there was ever a point in human history before this song existed. Or no, not even before this song existed, just that one musical phrase. Bum, 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 bum. That riff, that one simple 7-note riff, did not exist in the world until I was 5 years old, and that blows my mind, because honestly, you could tell me this was an ancient Spartan war chant that's been etched into human history since the dawn of recorded history, and I would believe you. The riff to Seven Nation Army is one of the most primal, animalistic pieces of musical composition I've ever heard. It only hit number 76 on the Hot 100, but even if it were a number one hit for 5 months straight, that still wouldn't matter. This song exists in a realm beyond chart success, beyond sales figures, beyond any reasonable metric of success, because it's not a song. It's far past the level of commercial product to be consumed. It's a fact of life at this point. The ironic thing is that the White Stripes are best known, like I said, for being the spearhead of the early 2000s garage rock revival, and Elephant in particular is considered to be an all-time great album that mostly follows through that genre moniker, but the album and the band's signature song is far more straightforward classic rock banger. I mean, I guess it is garage rock in a certain sense, but like I said before, it's really too timeless and raw to be fit into a single category. It's the kind of raw rock and roll perfection that would have made sense at pretty much any point between 1965 and 2010. It defines classic more than quite possibly any song I've ever talked about in the history of my channel. And I would say check it out, but I'm not that naive. You know it, and you love it. Rock on.
Smoke you righteous with one talk, you psychic among no possess you with one go.
I'm feeling glad I got sunshine in a bag. I'm useless, not for long. The future is coming on. Ain't happy.
The British rock band Blur is probably the most infamous example of a band that completely dominated British pop music while being a borderline one-hit wonder in America. I mean, technically Oasis also only had one proper chart hit in America, but they were still moving albums by the millions and being a huge, loud, influential presence over here. Whereas Blur's success in America is largely limited to Song 2 being a rock radio staple, Girls and Boys being a low-level pop hit, and very little else. I guess Blur frontman Damon Albarn got sick of getting outcharted by all the manufactured pop and boy band garbage, so he was like, fine, y'all want artificial and manufactured? Well, here's a group of literal animated monkeys singing about random nonsense. Y'all like that better? That's almost a direct quote, by the way. And as it turns out, yeah, we did actually like that better, because while they didn't actually do a whole lot better than Blur chart-wise, everyone in America at least knows who Gorillaz are. And along with Feel Good Inc., Clint Eastwood has become one of the most beloved and universally known pop songs of the millennial generation. Funny thing is, when you take a step back and look at it in context of its time, the success of this song is really fucking bizarre. A virtual band was a weird-ass concept for 2001 normies, and really needed a hard sell. And I'm kinda shocked that hard sell came from a low-swinging, trip-hoppish alt-rock piece with a kind of nebulous chorus and vaguely socially conscious lyrics from a cult alternative rapper the mainstream had never heard of. Here's 2 fun facts about Del the Funky Homo Sapien. Not only is he Ice Cube's younger cousin, but he was also thrown onto this song last minute and wrote his verse in half an hour using a book his mom gave him called How to Write a Hit Song. People tend to imagine Gorillaz as this hyper-controlled, meticulously crafted passion project, so it's kind of amazing how slapdash the construction of their first ever single was, and yet it was everything it needed to be. You never forget that hook after you hear it. The vagueness of it blends with Del's heady lyrics to put you in a cerebral mind space, and the song's metronomic bass line swings back and forth like a pendulum to put the listener into an almost hypnotic state while still being extremely accessible due to Albarn's signature killer production work, backed up by Dan the Automator, who would go on to do the music for the Tony Hawk games and the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack. More than anything, Gorillaz has always just been a really cool musical flashpoint for a really interesting guy and a whole bunch of his musically interesting friends. And Clint Eastwood does a wonderful job conveying that message to the world as the first outing of a legendary project. Okay, guys, I've got a confession to make. Even after all this time, nearly a full decade after its release, I have never played Undertale. And no, I don't have a good excuse for why not. This isn't like Stardew Valley, which I've never played because I know I'm the kind of person who will lose literal weeks of my life to the game if I ever tried it. I know a campaign of Undertale takes just a few hours to complete, so yeah, no real excuse other than there only being so many hours in a day. Because of that, I can't really give you a full breakdown of what Megalovania means in the full context of Undertale. That said, I have looked up what the context of this song within the game is. I know it's the song that plays when you fight Sans at the end of a playthrough where you choose to kill every major character in the game, meaning that it's essentially the final boss theme to a game where you play as a heartless genocidal monster, and to that end, yeah, I definitely get the vision. The Undertale soundtrack isn't the first one that blended chiptunes with more traditional instruments, but what really stands out to me about this soundtrack, and especially Megalovania, is how stiff and segmented it is. It's constantly building in intensity and layering new elements on top of each other to increase the tension, but there really isn't too much, if any, crescendo from one section to the other. It's just boom, measure's over, time to hit the next part of the song now. This is something I've noticed a lot in Toby Fox's work, particularly in the songs he's contributed to the Pokemon series, which I'm much more familiar with. His style sounds enormous and overwhelming while also being very stiff and rigid, like he's doing a Phil Spector wall of sound thing that he wants you to know is being created on a computer. And while that should come across as jarring and amateurish, Fox has found a way to make it really work for him. I suppose the phrase for it really is controlled chaos, because his music sounds like it's about to jump out of the speakers and attack you, but that note of artificiality keeps it from being too overwhelming. It's a musical quality I've not quite heard in much, if any, other video game music, and Megalovania is an archetypical example of it. I know this song only got into this poll as a meme pick, but it really does say a lot about the uniquely cool attributes of Toby Fox's style when you take a closer look.
Goes away in the air, and you could have it all. My empire of dirt, I will let you down.
Okay, so imagine you have a friend who likes music on a base level. You know, they dance at clubs sometimes, they let Spotify shuffle the current big hits for them. Music is cool, but they don't take it too seriously. I know a lot of people who think of music as a lesser art form than film or imagery or video games, and so here's my question. What song would you show one of those people if you had to convince them that their perception is wrong? Honestly, I think my answer would be Johnny Cash's cover of Hurt. The story behind this song is so simple, so easy to understand, and yet so impossibly powerful that I believe it has the ability to change a person's perception of what music can be. This song was originally recorded by 9 Inch Nails as a raw, ugly, 6-minute wail of pain where a young man lets out all his grief at his absolute rock bottom in a devastating wail. The NIN version was, like so many NIN songs, about a young man fighting a losing battle against the demons of his young adulthood. A true wounded dog song if ever I've heard one. When Trent Reznor gave permission for 71-year-old country legend Johnny Cash to cover it, it didn't make sense to him why he'd want to. Why is the man who sung Ring of Fire and A Boy Named Sue 40 years ago asking to cover My Youthful Wail of Angst? How does that make any sense? Even once he heard it, Reznor said that hearing Cash singing it was like watching his girlfriend fuck someone else. But then, weeks later, he saw the music video. Trent sat down and watched Johnny Cash, the legend who defined a whole genre of music, sitting somberly in his mansion, surrounded by visual indicators of his lifetime of achievements, all withering and rotting away as he sat there, an old man, all of his accomplishments doing nothing to offset the passage of time that would take his life from him later that same year. I don't think anything I can say is more powerful than Trent Reznor's own words on the subject, so allow me to quote him directly. I just lost my girlfriend, because that song isn't mine anymore. That was when it all made sense to me. It really made me think about how powerful music is as a medium and art form. I wrote some words and music in my bedroom as a way of staying sane about a bleak and desperate place I was in, totally isolated and alone. Some fucking how that winds up reinterpreted by a music legend from a radically different era and genre, and still retains sincerity and meaning. Different, but every bit as pure. Things felt stranger when he passed away. The song's purpose shifted again. It's incredibly flattering as a writer to have your song chosen by someone who's a great writer and a great artist who knows just what to do with it.
Supersonic man out of you. Don't stop me now. I'm having such a good time. I'm having a ball.
Do you know that for about a quarter century, this song was commonly agreed to be one of Queen's weakest songs? Yeah, when the song first dropped in 1979, it barely scraped onto the Hot 100 and was quickly forgotten, even as Queen entered their most commercially successful period ever in the early 80s, with the song generally being written off as a dud and the band never playing it live after the 1970s. Quite frankly, I think it says something about the caliber of a band that Queen are that they could have a song this iconic and wonderful in their catalog and somehow write it off because, you know, they're Queen, and they've got dozens of other defining arena rock staples they could be blasting out instead. Granted, a lot of the song's bad reputation might have come from Brian May intentionally kneecapping it. Apparently he really didn't like this song for decades, as he saw Freddie Mercury singing this song about careless debauchery while getting high and having crazy sex with a new guy every night, throwing caution to the wind while the AIDS epidemic was in full swing. Which, I mean, he wasn't wrong about. Freddie Mercury did die from AIDS. The fast and loose lifestyle he celebrated so boisterously in Don't Stop Me Now literally did end up taking his life. However, despite all the comfort with it and the ties the song had to the death of his best friend, Brian May did eventually come around and admit that he couldn't hate Don't Stop Me Now, for the exact reason you'd expect. Who on earth wants to live their life as someone who doesn't love Don't Stop Me Now? In May's own words, quote, "I had to give in. It's a great song, there's no way around it. Freddie had an amazing knack for putting his button on things that made people feel more alive. It's wonderful that everyone wants to sing it. They express their own joy and their own determination to make the best out of their lives and to keep on not getting knocked down by things." End quote. I really couldn't have put it any better myself. There are very few songs in the world that make me feel more pumped to be alive than Don't Stop Me Now. There is never a bad time to listen to it. It is an anthem for the triumph of the human spirit, and it injects me with life to the point where, for the last 7 years, I've frequently used it as a song to get me pumped up before I write these scripts. In 2014, Rolling Stone readers voted this as the third best Queen song behind Fat Bottom Girls and Bohemian Rhapsody. But honestly, I think that's still underselling it. Right hand to God, this is my pick for the single best song Queen has ever made, and I literally cannot give it any higher praise than that.
They see me mowing my front lawn. I know they're all thinking I'm so white and nerdy. Think I'm just too white and nerdy. Think I'm just too white and nerdy. Can't you see I'm white and nerdy? Look at me, I'm white and nerdy.
So, here's a fun fact for you. There have been exactly 3 artists who had top 40 hits in every decade from the 1980s to the 2010s. First was Madonna, then came Michael Jackson, and last but certainly not least, Mr. Weird Al Yankovic. A fact that makes me so intensely happy. Weird Al has never had a big chart presence, but he's never tried to be a top charting artist. Instead, just creating high quality parodies with very respectable regularity, being more than happy to be a recurring wacky side character in the sitcom of American pop culture rather than the main star. That said, even wacky side characters can have their own episodes every now and then, and that happened in 2006 when Weird Al got his first and to date only top 10 hit, White and Nerdy, from the hysterically titled album Straight Outta Linwood. This is a parody of then current #1 hit Ridin' by Chamillionaire and Crazy Bone, and like most artists, Chamillionaire was very happy to have Weird Al parody his song. In fact, Chamillionaire went as far as to say that he was shocked by what a genuinely good rapper Weird Al was, and that it was White and Nerdy that secured the Grammy for the original Ridin', and that he probably wouldn't have gotten a Grammy for Ridin' if it wasn't for White and Nerdy showing how iconic it was. Not only is that a wild compliment for this song to get, but I do think it highlights why this particular parody is so special within Weird Al's catalog. With most of Weird Al's other parodies, even the most beloved ones, their belovedness is largely tied to the song that they're parodying. You appreciate how funny and clever Al is, of course, but you're not going to hear Amish Paradise without thinking of Gangsta's Paradise. You're not going to hear Eat It without thinking of Beat It. And you're not going to hear The Saga Begins without thinking of American Pie. The thing that makes White and Nerdy so special is that, at least as far as I'm concerned, its relationship with the original song is purely symbiotic. Ridin' by Chamillionaire was a massive hit at the time, but it is a genuinely fantastic hip-hop banger, but it doesn't really do anything all that special beyond just being extremely solid throughout. What's so cool about White and Nerdy is that it still has everything great about the original Ridin', from the beat to the hook to Weird Al mimicking Crazy and Chamillionaire's flows almost exactly down to the bar, but makes it a hell of a lot more novel and memorable. Even if you've never heard the original Ridin', White and Nerdy is still a really fun, extremely entertaining song about being the whitest nerd who ever lived, and through creating a joke song that's an unironic banger, it's given the original ride and a much longer shelf life by constantly reminding everyone of what a kick-ass song it is whenever they think about White and Nerdy. This sort of symbiosis is of course present to some degree in most Weird Al songs, but White and Nerdy is the peak of it, and I'd argue it best defines the reason why Mr. Yankovic is one of the most beloved entertainers of my lifetime. Also, Donny Osmond is in the music video. He had nothing to do with the song. Weird Al just called him up as a backup dancer because Donny was the whitest guy he knew. Again, 10 out of 10. No notes.
Don't you hesitate. Go put your records on. Tell me your favorite song. You go ahead, let your head down.
Okay, so it's no secret that due to circumstances outside of my control, I had to stop production of this series for a few years. Because of that, I fear a bit of the context of why this song is here may be lost, so to catch you back up to speed, in 2020, an indie singer going by the name of Rit Momney put out a lo-fi bedroom pop cover of Put Your Records On that went TikTok viral. It made Billboard's list of the top 100 biggest songs of 2021, which made it eligible for me to talk about in my discussion of that year's biggest hits. And in those videos, I named Put Your Records On by Rit Momney as the worst hit song of 2021. Not going to go into all the reasons why I made that choice. You can check out that video if you want all the details, but yeah, since the poll to determine eligibility for this video was conducted in 2022, it's pretty obvious that my patrons wanted to hear more about my thoughts on the original Corinne Bailey Rae version of this song. In my 2021 video, I described the original version as, quote, an incredibly sweet little bubble of folksy neo-soul sunshine that is absolutely impossible to be in a bad mood after you hear it. And yeah, I think that just about sums it up. This song was a definitional peak of the neo-soul boom of the 90s and 2000s, which if you don't know was a term used to describe a generation of artists like Erykah Badu, Lauryn Hill, and Alicia Keys who clung to the timeless core of soul music while updating their aesthetics with more modern hip-hop and R&B sensibilities. By 2006, neo-soul was a firmly established genre which was even getting a bit oversaturated, so it says something about the raw artistry of this song that it's had a longer shelf life than so many of its equally timeless contemporaries. The song is a brilliant gem that embraces you with a calm, almost conversational vibe. I've very rarely heard a big radio hit that sounds so much like it's speaking to you personally in the way this one does. This personal conversation is happening in the sonic soundscape of a nostalgic but still very tangible summer day, with warm guitar strums and jazzy, earthy production touches that do a great job underscoring Rae's vocals, which strike a perfect medium between raspy and smooth, each employed in such a way that must have taken forever to balance so perfectly but feels utterly effortless. The lyrics fit into this charm-saturated equation like a glove, creating such an ode to the simple things in life that's so powerful it can transport you into a mindset of relaxed summer escapism even at your lowest. Even in the harshest throes of winter, this is a song that warms you. And I'd also be remiss to not mention the line, "Don't let those other boys fool you, gotta love that afro hairdo." There had been plenty of pop songs before this that gave love to Black Beauty, but the fact that frizzy African hair is woven so utterly effortlessly into one of the most enduring icons of joy in pop music history, that feels like something very special. I fully stand by my decision to call the Rit Momney cover of this song the worst hit of 2021, because it is a long fall from heaven, and the original recording of Put Your Records On is heaven personified. Truly one of those rare songs that I am fully confident in calling the perfect version of what it's trying to be. I was born in 1997, so I was an infant during the peak of the Pokemon craze in the last few years of the 90s. I first got into Pokemon around maybe 3rd or 4th grade, collecting the cards, playing Fire Red on my GBA and then Diamond on my DS. I was utterly obsessed with it for a few years, to the point where my parents got genuinely a little bit worried about me. Then, of course, I hit middle school and, Pokemon was a thing for babies and I got insecure and grew out of it. Then one day in 2013, when I was a junior in high school, I saw a commercial for Pokemon X and Y and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Pokemon was a really fucking fun thing as a kid, and I want to see what the new ones are like. I scraped together the money for a 3DS, got Pokemon X for Christmas, and didn't put it down again for the next few years. From then on, I was hooked, and I have never looked back. Pokemon remains one of my favorite hobbies to this day. I've been designing a Pokemon fan game as a passion project for a few years now. I'm eager to return to card collecting with that new app coming later this year, and Pokemon Violet is one of my favorite video games of all time, which if you know anything about that game, might just be the single most most embarrassing thing I have ever admitted on this channel. So, now you know my history, you know how obsessed I am with this franchise, but if you'll remember, you'll know that I was a bit too late to the party to miss the absolute peak of the franchise. The Advance and DP series of Pokemon were the ones that were big when I was a kid. I only saw episodes of the first season on a couple VHS tapes I had, as well as the occasional rerun here and there. With all that said, you might think I appreciate this song on the level of musical composition, but I don't really have that many nostalgic ties to it. It doesn't really get me in the feels that much. Well, if you do think that tells me you probably aren't a Pokemon fan yourself, because regardless of whether you were there for the golden age of Pokemon or not, this theme song is a uniting anthem for all Pokemon fans of all ages. It's not uncommon to hear entire theaters full of people singing along live when this song is performed in VGM concerts. I know for a fact this song is still very well known among the younger generations of Pokemon fans, and the reason for that is purely down to the song itself. I don't know whose idea it was to open up this late 90s cartoon with a screaming Ann Wilson-style power ballad, but that was one of the single greatest decisions in marketing history, because with that choice, the Pokemon anime, which was already an obsession of children at the time, became a show that you could not be late for. You were robbing yourself if you missed the opening theme song of this show, because singer Jason Page went all in on the vocals, screaming the song out with such raw, unfiltered passion that he has affirmed to every child watching this show that yes, this was a show and a franchise worth your unchecked passionate obsession. The Pokemon series has had quite a few banger theme songs over the years. Shout out to Whole New World from Johto Journeys, Unbeatable from Advanced Battles, and Alolan Moon from Ultra Adventures. No song has so perfectly tickled the part of the brain that caused the cultural Pokemon obsession that lingers to this day more than this one. And for more on the subject, let's turn it over to the man who sang it, Mr. Jason Page. Take it away, Jason.
Gotta catch 'em all. What's up, Sean? What's up, Sean? Jason Page here to tell you how I got the Pokemon theme song back in the day, 1998. John Leffler and John Sigler, two producers, owned a company called Rave Music, Paradise Music, and I sang for them. Domino's Pizza delivers. And I wrote some other jingles for them, submitted some, I was a writer and a jingle singer going around a whole bunch of jingle houses at the time. And, they were hired by 4Kids, who was hired by Pokemon International, to dub the English version. 1996, it was created in Japan. They brought it to the United States in 1998, and John and John wrote the song and knew that I was a voice that they would like because I had the young rock sound, and I think that young rock sound was kind of the voice of Ash, ultimately. And so they hired me to do it. I got paid a demo fee. And if it goes final, then I get paid a final fee. And then, of course, it got even bigger than just a final. It became a massive sensation because of you. And the reason Pokemon is so big now is because of the incredible ecosystem of people like yourself that have made it what it is today. I mean, it's a great song. It's a great product. But great song and great product does not make a great ecosystem of love from fans and, people all around the world who then reinvest themselves in Pokemon by creating products and projects and Comic-Cons and music and art. And that is the real love driving the success of the ecosystem still today. Just like me, I am going to all these events on my own, creating music on my own out of my love for the ecosystem and the Pokemon fans. And that's why it's so big, because of you, my friend. Because of your incredible efforts. I spent 4 hours back in the day recording the song, and now I'm trying to catch up to the 4,000 hours you probably spent throughout your whole childhood, making it what it is. Singing for Michael Jackson. They're kind of funny, because some of the comments on the YouTube channel when I posted the Pokemon theme song is that people thought that Michael Jackson was the singer of the Pokemon theme song. But I sang for Michael Jackson at his 30th anniversary concert at Madison Square Garden, 30th anniversary of the Jackson 5. He sang with them, but before that, a whole bunch of popular artists sang for Michael while he sat in the audience, and Whitney Houston and Usher, Luther Vandross, Liza Minnelli, Beyonce all sang to Michael Jackson right in the front row. And then Michael Jackson did the reunion with the Jackson 5, all their big songs. I sang backgrounds for all the people in the beginning, all the Jackson 5 songs, and then Michael's set of his songs, which was incredible. The applause in Madison Square Garden was epic. There was more applause time than there was songs. A song for 3 minutes, applause for 10 minutes. A song for 4 minutes, applause for 15 minutes. It was an epic performance, unlike anything else I've ever experienced and probably ever will again. Michael was the man, and I'm very, very, very glad that I had that opportunity to work with him. And also do the rap from Black and White. Protection from gangs, scopes of nation, cross the creek, fit human relations. I did that, and backgrounds on the whole show. And at the time, Gotta Catch 'Em All was already banging out there, and people knew it. So I was the Pokemon theme song singer, rapping with Michael Jackson. Anyway, thank you for this request. I hope you get this message and it finds you well, happy, and full of Poke love.
I'm a scat man.
Hail to the king, baby. A good story goes a long way as far as music goes. I've talked on countless occasions about how one of the most beautiful things about pop music is how knowledge of an artist's background can, in fact, make a song better. Praying wouldn't be nearly as powerful if you didn't know what happened to Kesha. Tears in Heaven only really works if you know what happened to Eric Clapton, etc. However, there's definitely something to be said about taking out the middleman and just directly expositing your backstory to the audience. That definitely runs the risk of being clunky and or corny if done wrong, but if done right, you can accomplish something very special. For instance, I'm no big fan of 50 Cent, but I will fully concede that Hate It or Love It is one of the all-time great hip-hop tracks, because it is genuinely inspiring to hear these guys winning after all they've been through. That said, Scatman by Scatman John, to be totally honest, accomplishes something arguably even greater than that. Hate It or Love It is a song that celebrates victory over impossible odds, while Scatman the song is itself a triumph over impossible odds. Scatman John was born with a debilitating stutter. He was bullied for it his whole life, and he hid from speaking by leaning into music and becoming a world-class jazz pianist. In the 90s, he learned about scat singing, which is a type of automatopoeic vocalization of nonsense syllables meant to match up with a beat, and he realized that because singing uses a different part of the brain from speaking, he was able to perform these vocals without stuttering. When an enterprising producer asked if he wanted to feature this scatting on a novel Eurodance song he was making, John thought it would be embarrassing if people found out that he stuttered, so, at the suggestion of his wife, he literally made his stutter the central focus of the song. The entire lyrical conceit of Scatman is that the dude opens up with a ridiculous bullet spray of rapid scat singing that would make Eminem sweat, and then uses the verses to tell the listener that he has a bad stutter, but he was able to use music to find a way around it, and that if he can overcome his handicap, so can you. It's corny, it's direct, and it is goddamn effective. I already brought up Hate It or Love It, but another direct comparison would be the bridge of Return of the Mac, where Mark Morrison reveals the girl he's singing about in the song dumped him because his music career wasn't taking off, which is the single most alpha move you can possibly pull in a song that became a worldwide smash. The exact same principle applies to Scatman. The more successful the song is, the more self-affirming the song's message is, and it translates to a level of triumphant vigor on par with Don't Stop Me Now. Of course, none of this would mean much if the song wasn't fun to listen to, which it very much is. These off-the-shelf European producers managed to put together an extremely infectious Eurodance beat, and you can tell that John is a musical virtuoso because he cramps so many memorable hooks and vocal riffs in there that it's hard to count. Scatman John passed away from lung cancer in 1999 at the age of 57, which is tragic, but you can't say he didn't live an extraordinary life and make the most he possibly could out of his time on Earth. Scatman far transcends its status as a novelty. It's a genuine achievement that will be remembered for years to come, and it is no surprise to me that it takes the #1 spot in this episode of Grab Bag Reviews. Thank you all for watching and participating in this video. Once again, every single song discussed in this video was selected by you, my patrons. And if you'd like to take part in the voting and suggestions for the next episode, for a pledge of just $2 per main series video, you can select literally any piece of music in the world you want me to talk about and take direct part in the voting to decide the song selection for yourself. Literally every dollar helps me immensely as I work towards making a full living off this channel. So if you could pledge those $2 per video, an average of literally less than a $5 bill per month, that would be immeasurable immeasurably helpful. Check out the link in the description for more information. Of course, if you'd like to, you can also become a top patron, and then you get to directly select a song for me to talk about. And if you want to see the kind of songs my top patrons suggested, then stay tuned for episode 10 of this series, which should be going live in just a few short days. Thank you all for watching through the video. I'm Sean Fay-Wolfe of Diamond X Studios, and until next time, take care of yourselves.